for sponsoring today's presentation. My name is Richard Myersco. I am the Caltrans District 5 District Small Business Liaison, or DSBL. It's a little bit of a mouthful, right? So we often say DSBL. It is my duty to assist small businesses in navigating Caltrans processes. Caltrans District 5, by the way, consists of the counties of Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, Monterey, San Benito, and Santa Cruz, often referred to as the Central Coast, right? Today's presentation is titled Understanding Caltrans Procurement and Service Contracts. This is the fourth installment in the Paving the Road to Success with Caltrans series of training presentations that we've been partnering with the Women's Business Center of SLO. And they are specifically authored to assist small businesses. And today's presentation will give a basic overview of the Caltrans procurement methods. In other words, how does Caltrans purchase goods and services? Before we begin, we'd like to review Caltrans non-discrimination policy statement. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination based upon race, color, and national origin. Specifically, 42 U.S.C. 2000D states that no person in the United States shall, on the grounds of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So that's really at the heart of everything Caltrans is hoping to achieve. And we actually have a link if you'd like to further deep dive into that. The department mission: provide a safe and reliable transportation network that serves all people and respects the environment. Caltrans strives to provide a safe, sustainable, integrated, and efficient transportation system to enhance our state's economy and livability. As you can see from some of the numbers quoted on this slide, it's really quite an immense operation in its scope. But the fourth and fifth bullet points, the last two, should really capture your attention, as Caltrans is telling you it needs assistance, and its contracting partners in the private sector are essential. We need help, and this means opportunity. Today's learning objectives. This presentation will give you a better understanding of the processes that Caltrans procurement and contracting personnel must follow when procuring goods and or services. A lot of the information we're going to give out today is going to be very informative, but it's really just for your information. This is nothing you have to be an expert on by the end of the presentation. We're going to give you a bunch of resources and a bunch of, and this presentation will be sent out to all attendees, but it is more about just kind of telling you what we're doing behind the scenes when we're purchasing things. And I think that is always helpful to be informed of the processes. We touched upon this in our previous Paving the Road to Success with Caltrans presentations, but today we will further extrapolate information on the subject. We will also discuss the difference between goods and services, IT and non-IT, as each has its own unique processes. Knowing where to look for historical purchases can help you determine if Caltrans has purchased the good or services that you offer. And we'll talk about that. You will also get a basic overview of procurement methods to better understand how the Caltrans personnel, procurement personnel go about their business. Okay, let's look at certifications and how they can benefit your company. Caltrans recognizes 3 business certifications. Small business, often shortened to SB. The small business umbrella is the state of California certification that includes the micro business designation and the adjacent small business for the purposes of public works certification. By the way, that purposes for public works would be for like a construction company. So if you're not involved in that, that would not be a certification you'd probably need to look into. Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise, or DVBE, is also a state of California certification that seeks to assist armed forces veterans with service-related disabilities who have left military service. And then lastly, under the federally funded project, so those first two were state, the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. The DBE, as it's shortened to, is a federal certification to address the disparity between some businesses and others in terms of access to economic opportunity and seeks to level the playing field for these businesses. DBE certifications are based upon an owner being a member of certain minority groups or women owned. When a project has even $1 of federal funds, you can expect to see some type of DBE goal. Not always the case, but most of the time you'll see that. On this slide, you can see what Caltrans goals are in regard to these certifications. 25% for small business, 5% for DBBE on state-funded contracts, and 22.2% for DBE, disadvantaged business enterprise, on federally funded contracts. Benefits of certification. There's a 5% bid preference for small business. The state may offer up to a 5% incentive to DBBEs in a formal bid process. And small business, I should say. And as a California certified SB or DBBE, your firm is added to the Department of General Services, that's a fellow state agency, certified firm database. Caltrans state funded procurement and contract goals. Well, again, for small business, it's 25%, disabled business, veteran business enterprise, it's 5%. Let's look at the Caltrans procurement process. The terms goods and commodities are often used interchangeably here at Caltrans. The Caltrans buyer must determine if the purchase is for goods and commodities or for a service. So is it something, a service you're providing to us, or is it some sort of product that we're getting from? Caltrans buyers, they must also further categorize goods and services as either IT or non-IT. And really, it is kind of that basic. So if it's an information technology product, it really is in its own category. So for those of you who are not involved in that business, then just concentrate on the non-information technology portion of what we're going to talk about. Contract managers must accurately determine the proper processes for procurement of a commodity or service. If 50%, so here's some tricky information. If 50% or more of the total expenditure is for service and labor, as opposed to the actual product, then a service contract must be written. So if we buy something from you and say the piece of, we'll call it a widget. The widget was only 30% of the total costs involved in the contract we signed, but 70% is so that somebody from your company can come out and make sure our widgets are working correctly, then it's going to be a service contract and not a product one. In cases where the product is 50% or more of the total expenditure, a purchase order must be written. So a purchase order will again be for a good. When in doubt, contact the Caltrans Division of Procurement and Services, also referred to as DPAC. So we're going to talk about them a lot today. And DPAC is not a separate agency. It's actually an internal portion of Caltrans. And basically, they deal with all of this. So they're a really great resource. So in a lot of cases, they're going to be the ones who are the experts on questions you may have. And I'm happy to sort of provide you information as best I can. But honestly, if it's a really tricky thing, I'll probably recommend you reach out to them, and I'll get you some contact information. In fact, we're going to provide that to you today. Yeah, so DPAC, we'll talk a lot about them today. Oh, they'll get mentioned, I should say, a lot today. Examples of goods include supplies and equipment to support department operations and safety, office and IT equipment, supplies for facility maintenance, whereas services examples include construction, landscaping, and pest control. So basically, if you're in the construction industry, most likely it's going to be a service contract. I've talked about this a lot in prior presentations that we've done with the Women's Business Center, but Cali Procure is really very important. You'll hear me sort of emphasize certain things, and this is one of them. So for those who are the uninitiated, Cali Procure is the California government online marketplace. But one of the great things that it has, so you can get a profile on here, and we'll talk about that. Or we have talked about that previously, but you basically will have a profile on here. And I highly recommend, if you want to do anything with any state agency, not just Caltrans, but any state agency, that you get like basically an account on here. It's free and you set it up. But historical purchases can be found on there too, which is kind of interesting. From the Cali Procure homepage, click on past purchases in the state contracting and procurement registration system. Now that is a mouthful, right? So we often refer to it, and you'll see it in parentheses, as skippers. It's a kind of a cute little way of saying that long abbreviated sentence. But skippers is basically where you can look at past contracts, or contracts is where the bids have already been awarded. So the contract itself may still be going, but you can look and see what previous contracts have looked like that have been awarded in your field of operations. And I think that's really important for you to do research. So, and then we provided a direct link for you to find it. Everything, for the most part, is going to be on the is going to be listed in our resource section as well. So if you can't remember where a certain link is, go to the end of today's presentation and you'll find it. So if you clicked on it like we did in that the previous slide, from here you can be formed for any of these parameters. So you can look for the department, purchase document number, supplier ID, supplier name, description, acquisition type, acquisition method, transaction start date. I don't expect you to be an authority on any of those, but just know that you can really drill down and get quite specific. Of course, you don't have to have all of those things I just listed. I think really for me personally, the most important thing is to utilize the Caltrans department number, which is 2660. And I don't expect you to remember that. Glass at the icon right up here. If you click on that, it will list all the California state agencies and their and their department code numbers. And 2660 is going to be the one for Caltrans. So if you put in 2660 and then you just push search, it would show you all the previous Caltrans contracts going back quite a distance. But I would definitely look over maybe the last 2 years. And that will give you an idea of what we bought, what we sold, what we not sold, but what we bought, what we purchased, what services we've needed. And it'll give you a better idea of what you can do to work with us. So here's the solicitation package for commodities. So commodities, again, could be, basically it's a good. So type in 2660 in the department box. That's, again, the Caltrans department code, like you'll see up in the top left-hand corner where my mouse is kind of hovering over. Type in a keyword in the description box. So metal, steel, office supplies, whatever you sell. Click search. As you can see in this example, I think the description was batteries and the acquisition type. So that would be up here in the top right-hand corner. So the person wrote in batteries. They also typed in the acquisition type, which was non-IT goods. So batteries, in this case, or at least are for non-IT goods. And then the acquisition method, which was right below it. And it says SB option competitive. And we're going to talk a lot more about like the acquisition methods coming up in the next slides. But anyway, you can really put in a lot of information, and then you'll see it lists a bunch of the corresponding contracts that would come up based upon your search. And then you click on it and you get further information. But even just glancing at them, you'll see a couple of really interesting things. First of all, the total amount of the purchase, what was the winning bid or the winning company that we purchased from, the date, of course, and then also it'll have a brief description of what it was. And I think if you click on it, however, you'll get the real nitty-gritty details of what you can find. Okay, let's cover procurement methods implemented by Caltrans. In other words, how does Caltrans, choose which company to buy from? There are 5 techniques that can be implemented by Caltrans purchasers that justify if a purchase is fair and reasonable. So fair and reasonable, you hear that a lot with Caltrans, at least internally here, we say it a lot. And that's an actual process. So what is fair and reasonable? No alternative quotes are necessary if at least one of the following techniques is utilized and the purchase is under 10,000. I think that purchase being under 10,000 is something really important to remember. Basically, if later audited, the purchaser needs to justify that this was a fair price for Caltrans to pay. Please note that any of these techniques are internal processes conducted by Caltrans staff. So again, this is information for you, but it's not anything that you will have to do in the future. Price comparison is the most common purchaser technique. Look back at the previous 12 to 18 month period to find documented price quotes that justify that this price is fair and reasonable. So we'll look back in our own records so we're assuming this is a product we've already bought before, and we're going to look back and see what we paid for it previously. And if it's like the same thing, then that might be a reason for us to just go with it because we've already done the research previously. Catalog or market pricing is sometimes used, and that often involves verifying prices in catalogs. So sometimes companies have online catalogs, or they actually send the catalogs to us upon our request. And then we'll look through that information and it'll say, typical, like if you go on Amazon, for instance, it'll say this widget costs $12.99. And then we'll look and see if that's something that is within our budget. Cost benefit analysis is connected to the purchaser's expertise. Very often, we have folks who have been in a job for maybe a year, maybe several years, maybe a ton of years, and they're just really good at this. They just know because they order this all the time. So they're actually an expert on ordering this particular product for Caltrans. And so they can tell right away by looking at a price, whether that's a good price or one that we need to maybe look somewhere else. And so they will justify the purchase price based upon, so they might see, like, for instance, that the number is really low. And so perhaps it's a sale or something. So they know that that's taking advantage of the market, and that's going to be helpful for us in our budget. So that could be a possibility. Controlled pricing, so that's the last one, is probably the most complicated one of them all. And it's one that is maybe for a smaller business, not something you're going to be doing right away, but it involves a pricing set by the state. These are prices that have been set by master contracts or agreements, and they're statewide. And they have already been agreed upon prior to. So we may have a very specialized widget that we can only buy from a particular company because it just has to be made to a certain standard. And it also is such a huge cost. So it's a sophisticated product, but also a huge cost. So they often have these master agreements. So less common, I think, for smaller businesses, but still a possibility. And also, just another reminder, please, make sure that you have a profile for your company on CalEProcure, and that's something that we think is very, very important. Okay, so solicitation packages for commodities. Once the state buyer has determined that the procurement can be acquired from an outside vendor, and that's an important part, by the way, because like if we are ordering a bunch of widgets and we have a whole warehouse of them somewhere and we forgot about it, that's not a good use of resources. So that's one of the things our purchasers have to do, is to make sure we don't already own it, that we don't already have it sitting, that we took advantage of a sale last year and we have a bunch of extra that are just waiting to be used. So that's one of the researches that our purchaser would have to do before they used an outside vendor. A solicitation for less than 10,000 may use the fair and reasonable documentation. So that was the previous slide. This is an informal method and not advertised. SB-DBBE option is used if the estimated cost of the commodities is over $5,000 and under $250,000. 2 plus SBs, so at least 2, or 2 plus DBBEs have been identified as potential vendors. Again, this is an informal and not advertised by Caltrans. So you won't see these advertised anywhere. They're kind of for amounts that that kind of justify that, but also because we're using small businesses, even if it's a larger amount, we can justify that. We'll discuss this further on the next slide, by the way. Non-IT goods up to 50,000 requires 2 quotes. For acquisitions, 50,000 to 99,999.99 cents, and unable to use the SBDDB option or a leverage procurement agreement, that's those master agreements I mentioned on the previous slide, the acquisition must be competitively bid. This probably seems complicated, but remember, this is just informative and not anything you need to process on your end. Our folks take months and months and months of training to be able to do this, so we don't expect you to, after one presentation, to be an expert, but we certainly want to provide you the information, and of course we'll answer your questions if you have anything that you want to ask about this process. The SB-DBBE option is not advertised to the public, as I mentioned previously. Certified firms are contacted directly to provide quotes. So we might just call you. So again, the only way that can happen most likely is if you have a profile on CalEProcure. But we'll call you and say, hey, you guys it looks like you sell widgets. What do you sell them for, and what kind of widgets are they? So then you can send us some information in written form, usually, I think, or you can provide a link to to show us the full price. At least 2 bids must be received for the solicitation to be completed. State agencies may use this streamlined process by contracting directly with a California certified SB or DBBE business for goods, services, information technology, and public works project. So just like having your profile is important, if you want to be considered for that SB or DBBE process, you will need to be certified. So certification is right up there with having your profile on CalProcure as being important if you want to do business with Caltrans or really any other state agencies too. The solicitation must be valued at more than $5,000, and the state agency must obtain price quotes from at least 2 California certified SB or DBBE businesses. And then for more information, we have a link to a government code that you can check out. Okay, so we talked about non-IT. So let's talk about IT. So for all those folks who are in the IT industry or related industries, this might be important for you, and for those who are not, less so. But okay, let's now focus on IT goods and services. Please note that IT goods and services must be advertised if they meet the following criteria. Goods are in excess of $100,000, so the product we're buying from you is more than $100,000, or if the services are in excess of $10,000. A contract for goods and services is in excess of $10,000 on the service portion only will also result in us having to do the advertisement. And this further illustrates kind of the differences between IT and non-IT goods and services. That's really in my own mind how I sort of try to categorize and separate things. It's like, is it IT or is it non-IT? So of course, most things will be non-IT, but there are plenty of stuff that is IT related. All right, we'll talk about some service contracts and some quick facts. Under 10,000, not advertised, and fair and reasonable pricing is used. And sometimes the CalCard method, which is a Visa card that our staff are trained on how to use. So if you are able to sell items to using Visa or MasterCard, I think then that could be a possibility for you. Under 10,000, not advertised, fair and reasonable pricing again. The next one is the invitation for price quote, IFPQ, informal and not advertised. And that contracting with DGS certified small businesses and micro businesses and disabled veteran business enterprises, utilizing a streamlined process. So that was one of the processes we really talked about in the previous slides. Now we're going to change it up. Invitation for bid, IFB. The IFB utilizes formal competitive bidding. So this is different from the first two we just mentioned. An IFB is often utilized to solicit bids that result in public works, commercial services, or consultant contracts. So if you're in the construction thing, it'd probably be this one. But if you're, again, if you're selling, if you're not in the construction business, then it might be one of those first two. Request for proposal, RFP. The RFP is a formal competitive solicitation. And so that's going to be a slightly different process, but I kind of group both of those last two in kind of the same area, although they do have some differences. And then the last one is really quite different from all of the previous four. It is and to me, one of the most intriguing. It's called emergency contracts, and it's just like it sounds. Services are required to immediately respond to a sudden, unexpected occurrence that poses a clear and imminent danger, requiring immediate action to prevent or mitigate the loss of or impairment of life, health, property, or essential public services. So pretty heavy stuff there. And emergency contracts are, like I said, are very different. We'll further address them in a couple of slides. Okay, examples of service contracts. Caltrans contracts for many types of services, really quite a few. I'm going to list a few of them here. Some of these contracts include architectural and engineering design, what we refer to in-house here as A&E. That's a very specialized type of contract involving a very specialized type of business. So if you're not sure if you're an A&E, you probably most likely are not. I know that a lot of construction companies do some design work, but these are folks who this is really what they sort of specialize in. And then there's cleanup of hazardous chemical spills, highway equipment, maintenance service and rest areas, public works, amongst others. So there's quite a few on there, but yeah, those are some of the things that we might enter into a service contract for. All right, so we talked about it previously, but we'll kind of focus on it now. The emergency contracts, as the title suggests, occur because of an emergency, such as a severe weather, earthquakes, wildfires, flood, other natural disasters. I'm trying to think what else could be in there, but anything, yeah. So we live, the coast of California, it really can be impacted by any of those, and sometimes multiple things can happen. One season you may have severe wildfires, and then of course, then you have rainy season comes, and all that turns into mud, and then you have mudslides. So you can have impacts that follow upon each other, and in a bad way, they kind of build upon each other. So when that happens, we elect to immediately contract with highway construction firms or related industries to begin cleanup and emergency repair work. Emergency contracts do not have to be advertised. We just need to move very quickly. We're talking like we're moving in hours and days as opposed to weeks and months. Work can begin before a contract is written, but only upon obtaining the required authorizations. And don't worry about any of that. When you're dealing with us, we'll let you know exactly what we need from you. And your firm must be, okay, this is going to be an obvious statement, but your firm must be capable of completing the necessary scope of work. I know that sounds obvious, but what we're saying in essence is, let's say you have 5 pieces of equipment and we need 20, and you've got 15 more coming next month. We have to do business with you based upon your your capabilities. And that can be frustrating. No, I get that, but it's just because we need to move quickly and we can't wait. What if there's a supply chain issue for you? Or what if the sale of the equipment you were going to buy falls through? So we can't do it based upon future capabilities. You have to do it based upon current capabilities. So that's really an important part of what we're talking about. So when they reach out to you, they'll ask you and they'll say, hey, this particular thing only needs 5 pieces of equipment. It doesn't need 20. It just needs 5, and you guys have that. So great. So when can you start work? We need it like tonight. And that's another thing I should mention. They will call you in the middle of the night. I mean, emergencies only seem to happen at night, right? After hours. So make sure when you fill out when you go to this registry and put your information in, that you put in a person or at least a phone number or email address that is constantly monitored. And I don't expect anyone to be 24-hour monitoring anything, but if you could get it forwarded to a cell phone at night, that way, when we call you at 2:00 in the morning, you can quickly respond, because honestly, we'll call, and if you don't answer, we just move on to the next company that has the capability on the list. So just something to keep in mind. And you enter your information utilizing the link on the screen, and then you are potentially, I should really point that out, it's not guaranteed that you're going to find work from this, because we may not need you. You may go through a period where we don't need that kind of equipment for many years, but then again, we could need it a lot. So it just depends. Caltrans Procurement and Contracts. So I've mentioned them before, but DPAC is an internal department here at Caltrans, and they're super important for contracts, as their name suggests, and for procurement. So they're really the experts on all of this. And so we do sort of recommend reaching out to them, especially when you have complicated questions that are specific to your company or the contract you're bidding on. It's really good to have that. You will have another contact as well here at Caltrans, and that would be me, and maybe other ones beyond me as well. But yeah, just to know that we've actually provided 2 links on here. One is to the main DPAC webpage, which is on the DOT website. And that is going to have a lot of information. As you can see, that's a screenshot of what it looks like. And then we also have a link to I found a contact info page for DPAC personnel. And so that could be helpful as well. But again, you're always welcome to reach out to myself, and I can put you in touch with the right person, or I can find out the information for you if it's a pretty simple thing to find out. But in this when it comes to contracts, this is really complicated stuff, and we want you to get the expert on it. The Cal eProcure website. So talked about this a few times, right? I think I mentioned it in almost every one of my presentations I do with the Women's Business Center, but it is really that important. So apologies for the redundancy of me keeping to harp on it, but it's so important. It's where you'll find solicitations currently advertised. So we talked about skippers before, which is where you find historical data or previous contracts, in other words. This is where you find current contracts. So I think it's good to look at the historical data and take a look at what's there, for sure. But if you are looking to bid on something today, or in the upcoming time, in the upcoming weeks, then this is going to be where you're going to find all that stuff. So we provided a link to directly find that, and you can select bid opportunities in the California State Contracts System, Contracts Register, excuse me, and that should be on the front page. However, I do want to point out, if you go up here at the top, when you get there, there's a tab at the very top that says Quick Links. It'll also be found there. The only thing I'm worried about is sometimes they change the front page information, so I didn't want you to think that it disappeared. But Quick Links is also really great. It's actually the one that the tab that I often use the most when I go on Cali Procure. Caltrans advertisements. So a list of advertisements will populate. And then they have a weird name for it. They call them a vet name, but basically that's like contracts. To view Caltrans advertisements, enter 2660. So that's that's our department code. And don't worry if you forget what that number is. Again, call me, or there's actually a pretty quick way for you to find it on the website. And then press the search button, and a list will then populate of contracts currently out to bid for Caltrans only. So getting back to Cali Procure, it has every state of California agency on there. But let's say you just want to concentrate on Caltrans. Some of these agencies won't even be in the district or community that you live in. So you may just want to concentrate on Caltrans. So you can do that. Caltrans minor B contracts will be on there as well. Those are $388,000 or less, and they are listed. Those are special types of construction contracts. So if you're not in the construction field, might be of less importance to you. But if you are in the construction field, really check those out, because there's a great way for smaller sized construction companies to work directly with Caltrans. And we have a link here for you. Okay, frequently asked questions. So we'll kind of talk about a few of those. Excuse me. Okay, do you have to be certified to do business with Caltrans? Okay, just let me start this out with, let me change the page, sorry. Do you have to be certified to do business with Caltrans? Okay, a reminder real quick that the certifications we recognize are small business, disabled veteran business enterprise, and disadvantaged business enterprise. No, you do not need to be certified to do business with the state. That's the long and short of it right there. The benefits of certification, however, were discussed earlier, and they are a lot. So do you technically have to be? No, but it's really going to help you out if you are. How's that? You can work with acquisition personnel. So the person who's, contacted you to ensure you complete any necessary contract forms, or reach out to your local DSPL. And I'm happy to send you information on where to find resources on how to be certified. We're actually going to put that resource section coming up here at the end. Where can I find more resources for sellers? So this particular link we've listed, and they are long. So I appreciate the fact that we like to use long URLs, but this one is for Caltrans seller resources. So they have a lot of really great information on there. And then that third one is, where can I find information about architectural and engineering contracts? So remember, those are specialized ones involving a very specialized industry. So for a lot of you, may not be as important, but it's good to know if you are one of those companies. We actually have a lot in San Luis Obispo, District 5 area, I should say. And so, yeah, there's a link on there to help those folks out. And then to further assist you, we provided information to some resources associated with today's presentation. And these include Caltrans resources, as well as other community small business organizations like the Women's Business Act. Okay, so here's some procurement specific resources for Caltrans. The main website, we've mentioned it a few times, the dot.ca.gov, and all things Caltrans related can be found on there. So even if it's a separate link, or I'm sorry, a separate website, it'll have a link on there to help you get there. But it's also quite a big website, so totally understand. That's why we try to provide you with direct links whenever possible. And you'll sometimes hear us referred to, by the way, by our official name, which is Caltrans Department of Transportation. California Department of Transportation, DOT. And Caltrans is a catchy name. It's what most of our people call it. It's what most of you call it. But just realize that sometimes our online presence will be by our more official name, which is Department of Transportation. We have once again provided a link to the DPAC. Remember, DPAC are the folks who help with procurement and commodities. And we've provided their link, as well as it was listed earlier in the presentation. And so that's good to know. And then we also have kind of a fun one at the bottom there, state agency by recycled campaign, SABRC, just in case you wanted another abbreviation, right? Maybe your company takes old tires and recycles them into reusable rubber material. There are certain state agencies that will have to prioritize buying recycled materials before they can buy any others. So good to know. If that's, again, a very specialized type of business that you may not be, involved in, but it's something interesting we thought we'd list. And here's a list of some general resources that are just going to help you out when it comes to anything Caltrans related. The Office of Civil Rights is kind of like DPAC, an internal division within Caltrans. And they actually do a lot of small business related, or provide a lot of small business related resources and information. So we've listed their page that is dedicated to small business. So, feel free to click on that and check out what other types of things might be available to you. Cali Procure, we mentioned a lot today, and is vital to any company wishing to do work with Caltrans or any other state agency. And I would say that's really like almost mandatory. It's not technically, but it really is so important. Contractors Corner, we haven't talked about a lot. We mentioned it in some of our other previous presentations with the Women's Business Center, but that's a dedicated, as it probably suggests when we see the word contractor, that's a dedicated like construction site. So if you're not in that field, in that industry, then it might not be as important to you. But I think if you are, or if you're in a related adjacent industry, definitely take a look at that. And that's got its own sort of web page that you can take a look at. And then, the other thing I should probably talk about is the one in the middle, the Outreach Events Calendar. So this is a really great tool. If you're looking for specific Caltrans small business training opportunities or events or workshops or outreach of any kind, then you can network with other, or perhaps events where you can network with other businesses. They're all going to be listed on there. So that's kind of a rule. So when we do outreach for small business, it has to be listed on this calendar. This is where you can learn about upcoming events in other districts as well as the one you're in. So District 5 will be on there for sure, but also all the other neighboring districts. And we'll show you a map later. This is where you can click on a specific event and you'll find out who's hosting it, if it's online or in person. I will say currently, pandemic kind of caused this to happen, and we've just found it to be, according to the feedback we get, more convenient for a lot of folks. A lot of the events are going to be virtual, like today's presentation. So that's cool because you can, attend from the confines of your office or home, and there's no, time expenditure, traveling. But it is kind of cool that means like a lot of it. So if there's an event in LA, there's a good chance it's going to be virtual. So maybe you could still attend, and it's an important topic. So when you go on there, the events calendar will kind of talk about what the event is about as well, what the topic is, but they usually have a synopsis giving you further information. Then of course and then a lot of times there's a registration link to attend or a person to contact to ask to be invited. And they can usually answer questions about the event as well. So interesting stuff. Yeah. So the events calendar is something I try to send out to anybody who reaches out to me so they can check out events like today. We have a few more resources on here. For all DBE related, so disadvantaged business enterprise related information, visit both of the sites listed. One is like an information page, and the other one's like a dedicated whole website. We kind of rolled that about maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. It was before I started with Caltrans, but it's pretty new. And anything DBE related is going to be on there. And so I definitely think if you're a DBE certified company, or if you're looking to become certified, then you for sure will need to visit that site. And that first link will have just a lot of other informational sites links that will be helpful for you. Please note the state contract and procurement registration system, that Skippers I talked about, where you can look up previous contracts, and that can be accessed through the Cali Procure website, but we've provided the direct link here. And in addition, we have the contract cost data. That gets a little more technical, but I think it's for folks who like a lot of information, it's definitely one to check out. I would always check out any website at least once just to see if it's for you. But they have a lot of great information on there as well. And you can look up past bids. You can look up competitors. I didn't really mention that today. So you can see what other folks are on Cali Procure. So you have a competitor down the street and they've been doing business with Caltrans and they're really successful. And maybe you want to find out how their profile looks to give you some ideas. There's nothing wrong with that. It's all public information. And I think that's a great way for you to find out, what your fellow businesses in your industry are doing. And maybe there's something that they have that you don't that will make your account more, your profile rather more attractive. Okay, so here we have some community small business resources. The Apex accelerators are specifically for, from what they tell me anyway, they're kind of their thing that they're really focused on is helping folks with getting government contracts and bidding on government contracts. And by the way, that's all types of government. So local, county, state, federal, all kinds of different, types of federal, I'm sorry, all types of different types of government entities. The Golden State Apex is located in Bakersfield, and they are if you're residing in San Luis Obispo, they'll be the one that will be able to provide services for you. We're in their district. There's also another one in Monterey Bay if you happen to be in the northern part of District 5. And so, yeah, check those out. Reach out to them. The Women's Business Center, of course, our favorite, right? They're the folks that we are working with today. And they have purposely designed programs and resources for women business operators, but all are welcome. And I think they do a lot of great work, and they have a lot of great workshops, and they've been wonderful for us to work with. We have the small business development centers, which are going to be able to offer a multitude of programs to assist new and established companies. They actually have a brick and mortar office in SLO in San Luis Obispo, and the SBDC in SLO is affiliated with Cal Poly, the local university, and they're really pretty big on tech entrepreneurship. So they have a lot of pretty sophisticated programs and resources they can offer, but they also help just mom and pop businesses doing what other kinds of business that are outside of that. So you don't have to be some whiz kid, sort of entrepreneur trying to, invent the next great app. You can also be somebody who's starting a bakery. So they have a lot of great resources as well. SCORE is the Service Corps of Retired Executives. You'll probably never hear it called that. SCORE is they have a chapter here in San Luis Obispo as well, and their main focus, from my understanding, is that they focus on mentoring. Now, I would suggest that all of these, community resources would be able to help you and be able to mentor you, but that's kind of their thing, and it's mostly experienced business people, many of whom are going to be retired, and they're going to feel like they can offer you a lot of information where what they did, especially if it's in a related industry to what they came. And so you can, if you go on their site, you can find a person maybe that worked in construction if you're in construction, or that worked in accounting if you have an accounting business, whatever it is. And then at the bottom there, we have the Small Business Administration. That's a federal agency, and they're an umbrella agency. They help a lot of the organizations that were previously listed on the page there. And they also have their own information and resources they can give you, but it's a great information hub. And I would suggest, tooling around on there one day when you get the chance. They do have resources in your local community as well as at the federal, national level. But they're a great, another great resource as well. And District Small Business Liaisons. Let's talk about that. So that's me, right? DSBL, right? For sure. We talked about that. Each of Caltrans 12 districts has at least one district small business liaison, also known as DSBL. Because each district operates individually, some procurement processes may differ amongst the districts. And let me talk about that. I don't think the rules will. I think those are hard rules that Caltrans has to go by. But what I think I'm suggesting is they might use one type of procurement process more than the other because of the area they're in. So this can really be quite different, right? LA is the largest population center in California. There's millions and millions and millions, tens of millions of people there. And that's very different to, Eureka up in the top part of the state. They're just going to be different. So that means you're going to have less people, less types of business, maybe less specialized kinds of business, just because it's a smaller economy. So they may use one particular type of procurement process that I mentioned earlier today, but more often than, say, the folks in LA. So I think the best resource really for you to get that information is going to be your local DSBL of either where your company is, resides, or where you're hoping to do business. So reach out to that person. However, you're welcome to reach out to me about anything at any time. And it doesn't matter if it's another district. So please feel free to do so. And we serve as the district's primary point of contact for small business related concerns, including efforts to increase the participation of certified businesses, like we talked about, small business, disabled business enterprise, and disadvantaged business enterprise. And we also provide outreach like today and advocacy services. So, I do give feedback to my bosses about what's going on in small business. Once again, I and the other district small business liaisons are your primary point of contact when trying to work with our department. And there's also a web link listed on this page that is a contact information page for all the Caltrans DSBLs statewide. So if you are joining us today from Northern California, you can click on there. It'll tell you which person would be maybe the best person to contact. And then, it's kind of like a concierge, like in a hotel. We don't always have like the information or the tickets to the Broadway show, but we usually have a way of getting those things for you to help you. And we can then turn you over to the real experts who can give you very precise information. And one of our last slides here we're going to talk about is the map. I mentioned it earlier. This is a map of the entire state, and it shows every single county and what district they reside in. So most districts are going to have several counties in them, but a few of the larger ones only have one. For instance, District 11, or District 12 rather, is just Orange County. But it'll show you so I should mention our headquarters is located in Sacramento. That's typical of most state agencies. They mostly have their headquarters for the agency level are going to be up in Sacramento. But each district, so District 5, also has its own headquarters, and for us, it's here in San Luis Obispo, which is where I'm coming from today. And then we'll have various facilities throughout Santa Barbara County, in Monterey County, we'll have various facilities, but the actual district headquarters will be in San Luis Obispo, and that's typically where a lot of the acting work is done as well. And also we've emboldened all the districts, their names and their numbers. So if you click on District 3, it will actually take you to District 3's web pages on the main DOT website, or District 5, I should say. So then you can find out local information, which I find that the local information is often more pertinent in some ways than the statewide stuff. But it's a great website. I think it's just kind of hard to navigate, but it does have its own search engine. But again, we've gone, hopefully we've provided all the direct links that you will need. And that will bring us to the end of today's presentation, Understanding Caltrans Procurement and Service Contracts. And, please let me know if you have any questions. And that's my information if you need it. But I did want to mention today that we will be hosting our 5th presentation, Women's Business Center Partnership presentation. It's in the Continuing Paving Your Road to Success with Caltrans series. And that one's titled Know Your Small Business Resources with Caltrans. And so that will be a further kind of maybe deep dive on some of the resources that are out there. And we welcome you to join us on February 1st. Am I reading that right? And that is going to be—
Yes, that's correct.
That's correct. Okay. So sometimes I can't read my own writing. So that will be at 12 o'clock until 1 p.m. And, we do invite you to join us for that. Each of these presentations, by the way, are meant to be kind of like standalone. So we want people who have not joined us for the previous ones to still be able to find information and not feel confused. So, but at the same time, we do feel like each of the presentations kind of build upon each other. So we do recommend, if you're able to come join us for all of them. But if you can't, that's okay too. And if only certain topics are appealing to you, that's no problem. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard. As always, we truly appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise with us.